All right, boom. It's wire D, and the D stands for deadlock.
And welcome back, guys, to another Deadlock guide. This one is all about mid-boss. This is the objective that you need to take mid-game after you've gotten a team wipe. Don't go push their base. Even if there's walkers still up, if the enemy's dead for longer than 30 seconds, go take this objective. I'm about to show you just how absolutely pivotal it is that you take this objective and pair it, ideally with a rune. But it looks like my team's already got him. Now we're just going to go push, okay? So you want to grab this objective when it looks safe enough to grab it. Okay, I'm talking, again, 30-second or longer respawn timers, ideally on 2 or more heroes. And if you can coordinate your team when they're around mid, that's all the better. But even sometimes when you're just ahead and they have respawn timers, if you just go do mid, watch, like, I'm just insanely strong right now, right? I'm going to walk up 1v2 these clowns, no problemos. And it's because the buff for mid-boss is actually way more than just the fact that gives your team 3 revives, okay? The buff itself, you preserve it by keeping one of your revives alive, which is all the more reason why it's not about just the fact that your team revives. Ideally, what you do is you leverage the buff's damage given towards, I think, spirit and fire rate, and just straight up weapon damage to overpower the enemy significantly. So again, as you can see, this Mo and Krill, I mean, I am like 7, 8k souls on him. And this is not a bot match. And this is a drifter that's about to just get slam damned. But yeah, we roll over the enemy team with the buff itself. See, we're not trying to sacrifice our lives needlessly in the name of taking good fight. I will do it here. Not my life, but my ulti, just to trap the warden away from his team. I could have used debuff remover, but we're going to save that for a more important time. Yeah, I got that Spirit Burn proc on him, and Warden's spells have been wasted. He had to use, like, everything. I don't know if he has a move speed buff item. He had to use Fleet Foot, not that that really matters, like, probably a 30-second cooldown, but he definitely uses ulti. That's a longer than 30-second cooldown. He's useless. Put the escalating exposure on him, and they burn, baby. They burn. And yeah, all this enabled, facilitated, if you will, by mid-boss, right? You get the mid-boss, you push the Patron. It should be a tale as old as time itself, but I see so many teams fuck this up. And it's for this reason that I now want to pull up, if I can, the wiki to really demonstrate with facts just how powerful this is. You see, I had a document here. I was trying to actually put bullet points. So mid-boss does 20 damage per tick, equaling about 100 damage per second because it ticks very quickly when its laser is targeted on a hero. Important things to know about this: the damage does not scale, and it only ever targets one hero. So mid-boss is way less damaging as an objective than any other game that I can think of where you compare like Roshan or Baron Nashor or that thing from Smite. I don't know. Okay, look, mid-boss is very easy to take when you have a couple of items and as long as you have more than one hero, because you will need to out-damage its shield mechanic. I can't find any stats on this, but it's enough of a shield damage barrier-wise, and it regenerates so quickly that you really do want 2 or 3 sources of damage. Ideally, your whole team's there. But to take it in a comfortable time, you want some dude with bullet damage to just come down there and zerg through it. And usually at around the 10 to 15 minute mark, you won't even be taking it then. And most of, I'd say like mid-ELO games, mid-boss is a serious objective, anywhere from around the 15 to 20 minute mark, because the pace of the game is just quite frankly slower. And teams can't coordinate as well. But regardless, the shield is something you need to account for in your damage, and it's not something that you're going to want to solo, generally speaking. But outside of this shield mechanic, it's really not that scary of an objective. You need to be inside the pit completely to take it, and I have this theory that it's weak against heavy melee attacks. So if you're a support type character, a page, dynamo, not really building too much damage, you can actually just hold heavy melee. It does way more damage against mid-boss than I think it does in other targets. You can quote, you don't quote me on that, but check it in game for yourself. I've tested it. It feels like the heavy melee does more damage against mid-boss. So we've gone over like why is it important to take? It's because of the buff. Let's actually just go over that. So yeah, check a fire rate. So it does not give weapon damage, but a 15% fire rate. That's insane. 15% max HP. That's also insane. And 15% more spirit damage outgoing for 4 minutes that it gives your entire team as long as they have 1 rejuvenator credit left, which is why, again, you grab this thing, it does give your team 3 free revives, and it really more specifically gives one person 1 revive, and 3 people on your team can use that. Every person can only use 1 revive. So once you've used your revive, you actually lose the buff's effects and you lose the ability to use another revive. So especially important to keep that in mind, and yet another reason why you want to keep these credits alive for as long as possible, because really mid-boss is a big buff. That's really how you should think about it, right? And most of your team will retain the buffs as long as 1 rejuvenator credit is left, but ideally everybody on your team has this buff and you're overwhelming the enemy with a souls or like a net worth advantage due to these 3 stats being applied to everyone.
And you use the revives only to bait enemies into bad fights. You do not throw your life away willy-nilly because that makes you weaker. You use the revives strategically only when the enemy is hard committed, using important spells on key heroes to fight, right? You just use the revives to take even better fights, but you do not waste them. Do not waste these things.
It does last for 4 minutes, which is way less time than Baron, or I should say Roshan, right? It's 20% less time to be exact, because Roshan lasts for 5 minutes. And the respawn timer it's weird rules. I wouldn't be surprised if they change this, but it's 7 minutes after his first death, then 6 minutes, then 5 minutes, and then it stays at 5 minutes. Kind of weird, but yeah, that's like the main thing to note about mid-boss, other than, you know, you need to heavy melee to actually grab the crystal, and I think it says right here, 7 seconds for the crystal to actually descend from the air down to the ground. There's a noise that it makes the entire time.
The rejuvenator is descending.
And this is very important because it means it's actually a lot easier to steal than like Roche or something like that, where, say, the game is essentially telling you the exact moment with the sound cues, with the exact 7 seconds that it takes, right? The second you hear that scream of the mid-boss dying, you know, hey, in 7 seconds, I can jump down there and actually hit the crystal. And it's for that reason that there is the mini game going on, the mini mind game of like, do you throw a heavy melee when it's sketchy, or do you throw out the parry, right? When there's enemy heroes around and your team has just cleared mid-boss and it looks like they're gonna descend down or, you know, run in from the sides, whatever, from every angle, and try to steal the buff. Do you throw out the heavy melee? Do you stand next to the credit and the rejuvenator credit and throw out the parry? There's a mind game to be played there. My personal opinion, since nobody throws parries, at least in low ELO, I think you should play for the parry if your team's there, and if your team's not, if you're basically the solo stealer,
I think you should still play for the parry in that situation, but play even more out of sight, because you want to like come in and surprise him with the parry.
which I think is worth it, by the way. I think dying for a mid-boss credit is absolutely worth it. Just complete side note. If you can steal 1 mid-boss credit and it means you'll die twice, I honestly think that's worth it. Mid-boss is so pivotal, right? Giving the opponent their 3 or 4 revives and these buffs team-wide is so insanely game-losing. And just getting 1 credit, as we established, is enough, as long as nobody dies, to accomplish this buff team-wide, that I honestly think mid-boss is worth throwing your life at, even if everybody's dead, right? The only situation where it doesn't make sense is where you go in, you lose your life, and you don't even get a credit. But Deadlock is one of those games where you can kind of always try to make some magic happen, especially on certain heroes like Dynamo, Kelvin. There's certain heroes that just really benefit from like, hey, the enemy team's going to group in a very small area, and my ultimate is particularly good in these scenarios.
Yeah, like don't forget, Kelvin ulti freezes the rejuve, rendering both teams unable to collect it for the duration.
Yeah, just throw your life at it. If you get a buff and end up dying, even if you die twice, it's probably worth it, because the sheer force of the enemy team having a full rejuve to roll your team for 4 minutes is often overwhelming enough for you to just lose the game on the spot. So that's really my big mid-boss ramble, guys. Mid-boss is so important that it is essentially the game in an objective. If you can't get mid-boss, if you have to fully give it to the enemy team, you will likely lose the game. It is very decisive. So fight for it. I've kind of gone over all of the mechanics here. To summarize, it gives you a massive buff for 4 minutes if you take it, and you only need 1 credit to get it. You lose the buff on your individual hero if you die, but your team will retain the buff as long as 1 credit is left, and you can only use 1 credit per person. So you can't die, revive, die again, and then expect the rejuvenator credit to have your back. Actually, you don't even have the buff, so you're definitely not coming back. Responds 7, 6, 5 minutes, and then stays at 5 minutes from there. And I think it's weak to heavy melees. I think if you don't do that much gun damage, you can actually just justify your presence there with like spirit damage, spells, you know, often on Dynamo, I'm just sitting there taking it with my stomps and my heavy melees while I'm reloading my gun or casting my heal. So, yeah, very important objective. Please get this and prioritize it in your games. It will single-handedly win you the game.
You should absolutely take this over walkers if the opportunity presents itself for your team to group in and do an objective, right? If people are dead, go take mid boss, then go take the walkers.